Hi, this is Carl Rust, and I've worked in schools for over 30 years. I've learned a lot about how people learn, and I wrote a book called Get Out of the Way and Let Kids Learn: How We Can Transform Schools and Reintroduce Natural Learning. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Get Out of the Way and Let Kids Learn podcast number 11. So I've got several things to tell you about things that are happening. So we've been in school for 7 days now. We had a 5-day week last week and 2 days the week before. So last week we had, like a lot of people across the country, we had some problems with excessive heat. And on Tuesday afternoon, it was predicted that the next day would be in the upper 90s with heat index temperatures of over 100 degrees. So we were told on Tuesday, no outside recess on Wednesday. It'd have to be indoor recess. So again, this is where schools get locked into a schedule, and the recess is going to happen at, for us, it was supposed to start at 12:15 and at 12:35. But at that time, it would have been too hot. So because my group has some flexibility, we have some very few hard and fast times in our schedule. So I decided that what we would do is shortly after attendance and announcements and all that, we would do some of our activities outside and then take a recess at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we have the flexibility to do that. And really, ideally, to me, the ideal educational setting would be one where you have some flexibility with scheduling. So instead of saying you have to do indoor recess, I would rather that the school say, look at your schedule and see if you could take kids out before it gets too hot, which is what I did. But I'm living in kind of this dream world, and I have to keep reminding myself and people listening and watching that this is not, my situation is different. I would like it to be the same for everybody, but unfortunately, because of the way schools are set up and because of my personal situation, I have more freedom. But I think teachers probably could have done it, but they don't think about it. They don't think, oh, well, maybe we could go out at a different time. So we took the kids outside. We did our class meeting in a circle outside. We did journaling. I just asked them to do observations of what they saw, especially in geometric terms, because that's something that we're doing in math. And then after they did those things for a while, then we just did recess until about 9 o'clock. It was time to go in because we have specials at 9:15. So we lined up and went inside about 9 o'clock. They actually got more recess this way than when we do it at the normal time. The other thing that I think was interesting, there's lots of interesting things going on. I went to a conference in Indianapolis called PopCon. A lot of people dressed up, cosplay, costumes, anime characters and Star Wars, lots of creative props that some that they had made themselves, some that they bought. But again, expression of personal creativity, which I think is really important. I thought was interesting. I'm behind on my Smithsonian magazine. I get the subscription, and I like to read it. There's so many interesting articles in here, but in the back they have Ask Smithsonian. So one of the questions this time was, why did animals, even insects, evolve to play? And I never knew that. I didn't know that insects had play. I knew animals did, and so here's the answer from Floyd Shockley, Entomology Collections Manager. And he says, when we describe animal play, we generally mean behavior performed without a normal stimulus or direct immediate benefit. Play has been well documented in mammals, birds, reptiles, and fish. I didn't know that. I knew about mammals, definitely. Larger animals might play to engage and develop their brains. But even small invertebrates can be seen playing. Some jumping spiders will chase laser pointers as cats do, while some young wasps engage in play fighting. They may be practicing skills they'll need later to defend territory, attract a mate, or take down prey. But insect behavior is difficult to tease apart because their neuroanatomy and physiology are so different from our own. So there's another example of how play is the natural thing that happens in the world all over the place. And it's important in learning, as we've talked about before. Okay. Today I'm going to talk about chapter 11 in my book, When and How Will Change Happen? And the answer to the question is it's happening already, and it's happening all over the place. And it's happening in a lot of different ways. So, is it possible for conventional schools to change? I don't know. I think they have to, or they're going to become extinct. And one of the things in the world is we see is change occurs naturally. And sometimes it's sudden change, and sometimes it takes a long time. If conventional schools don't change drastically, they'll find themselves out of business. So a book that I read a while back, Disrupting Class, by Clayton Christensen, Curtis W. Johnson, and Michael B. Horn, they explain about a force in economics called disruption. The phenomenon occurs when a monolithic organization dominates an industry and is very resistant to change. A revolutionary force can then start with a marginalized or underserved population, and when a tipping point is reached, can become dominant in the industry, with the former leader being sent to the dust heap of history. Examples include how IBM dominated the computer business with massive computers that took up rooms until Apple and Microsoft came along, and they served an underserved population, which were basically kids, and some of the early computers were built as toys for kids, much smaller. And then they became the dominant force in the industry. Another example is how film cameras were replaced with cell phones and digital photography. Now, hardly anybody uses a camera anymore. I mean, I think a few very devoted hobbyists probably use film cameras. Everybody else just uses their phone. I think digital cameras are probably on the way out also because it's so convenient and easy to use your phone. What forces will emerge to disrupt compulsory public education? Now, public conventional education can have some control over this if they become more responsive to families and kids' needs. We have charter schools and we have private schools. Lots of times they're just the same kind of thing as the conventional school, public school. Sometimes you get public school or a charter school that's different, and we're just getting one in my area, just started, the same time school started here. Premier Arts Academy is an arts-based school that does standards-based grading, and they do mastery grading, and they do some mixed age, and they're open to experimenting, trying to keep their class sizes small with lots of adults per kid. So that could be a disruption, and it already is a disruption because some of the kids obviously have left the public system. It's still public, but they've left the Elkhart Community School, and some of the other surrounding areas have lost kids to this program. And it's probably they're going to add a grade every year. So they started K to 6. They're going to have 7th grade, then an 8th grade. And the plans right now is to stop at 8th grade. But who knows in 3 years what will happen. So that can be a disrupting force. But the conventional school system can offer different things. They could, and that's what I hope they'll do. Homeschooling is already a huge movement, and the pandemic just made it bigger. I think I heard statistics that it doubled. The number of kids being homeschooled in the U.S. doubled during the pandemic, and once everything started going back to so-called normal, some of the kids left and went back, but a lot of them stayed. So the levels of homeschoolers are still above where they were pre-pandemic, and that's a growing thing. There are some private schools that offer alternatives, and there's schools scattered all over the world, and I've mentioned a few of them before. Sudbury Valley School in Framingham, Massachusetts, offers children age 4 to 20 complete freedom to pursue any interest that they have. The grandparent of all free democratic schools is Summerhill in England, which has been around since 1921, still going strong. They promote freedom and making decisions in democratic school meeting. Montessori is an alternative. It's way different than the conventional system. There's more play, there's more age mixing. Curriculum is still controlled by adults, so it's not as free as Summerhill or Sudbury Valley, but it's freer. And then there's also the Waldorf schools based on the work of Rudolf Steiner, and there they do a lot of arts things. Kids are encouraged to follow their interests. They still have an adult-controlled curriculum, but still freer than normal conventional schools. If you go to the AERO website, Alternative Education Resource Organization, there's a list of schools all over the world, and you can check these out, and they come and go. But I think, I have to talk to Jerry Mintz about this, but I think the list is growing. New schools spring up and offer amazing choices. One of the things that I've talked about before are micro schools, which are Carrie McDonald has discussed a lot on her podcast, which I'll mention the name at the end. But micro schools, where it could be anywhere from 10, 20, 30, 40 kids, is a big movement growing, spreading all over the place. So in my book, I have a list of all kinds of schools. I'm just going to mention a few here for the sake of time. But if you're interested in more information, go to the AERO website or look at my book. And there's also the Association for Self-Directed Education, ASDE, Association Self-Directed Education. They also have a list of schools and a map where you can look. Maybe there's something in your area. Who knows? Check it out. But the books or the schools that I mentioned in my book, one of them is Pine Community School in Queensland, Australia. And Pine's motto is Happy Children Learn. I agree. So here, this is what they say on their website. Pine's motto is Happy Children Learn, and everything in our philosophy and approach stems from that. So how do we make this happen? What does it mean to be happy? How do we help our children be happy and thus learn well? For a start, Pine allows children to have a childhood, allowing lots of time for play, allowing them to take risks and understand consequences, not enforcing needless structure and control. We allow children to have downtime when they're not interested in learning, and we maximize the uptime. So I thought of something the other day. I was listening to a podcast when I was coming back from Indianapolis. Jackie Scully's The Teacher Story, and she had a gentleman on there that helps design classrooms for more interactive learning opportunities. And the statement was made that one of his kids lost ground in language arts during COVID. And I've heard this kind of thing before, and you'll see newspaper articles. Test scores went down, kids lost learning, and I kept thinking, that just doesn't make sense to me. But here's a little theory that hatched today in my brain. What if the reason that they lost out on some of these things wasn't really because they missed instruction? Because instruction can be done via Zoom on video. What's missing, though, is the human interaction. And like we talked about before, if your brain is a muscle and you're exercising your language muscle, but you're isolated in your bedroom with an iPad or a laptop, you're missing the human interaction. I mean, you can still have some of that, but I just wondered about that. Let's see what else we got here. Lots of good schools. In Brazil, there is the Lassano Institute, and here's a quotation from him. The Lassano Institute promotes a pedagogy that is organized around the concepts of autonomy and democracy, trust in human nature, a positive view of all, and free exposure of content using a variety of forms and tools to do this, such as workshops, inverted classroom, projects, digital platform, technical exit, etc. Their goals are to promote autonomy and happiness of the student, stimulate the exercise of critical thinking that will allow him to situate himself in life in a free and creative way, develop the attributes of ethics, culture, and social responsibility based on democratic practices and learning. Our thesis is that the student, in adhering to our pedagogy, can increase your curiosity, increase the general interest in the propaedeutics, I never heard that, mathematics, physics, geography, biology, etc., increase their ability to learn, have greater self-understanding, develop self-security, gain independence in their options, develop their critical capacity, avoid the development of various psychiatric disorders. Alpha Autonomous School in Toronto has been around since 1972. They encourage active engagement with real and meaningful pursuits. And even the youngest children are encouraged to develop a personal sense of responsibility for their own learning. Children choose what, how, and when they learn to the greatest extent possible. Forest School in Giles, Canada, in North Giles, Canada. Just a lot of different examples. A Place to Grow in Stroud, England lists these values. The environment allows children and adults to feel physically and psychologically safe and know that they matter. Each child is nurtured. We aim to support the social, emotional, intellectual, and creative needs of each child. We see behavior as information about how a child is feeling. There's always a good reason for any behavior, even if we never find out what that reason is. There's no fixed curriculum, but there is time to play, to decide on things, to change one's mind. I think that's very important, because sometimes we get so caught up in conventional school with giving assignments that everyone must do, we don't understand that we're kind of robbing kids of the ability to set out on a course, decide, oh no, that's not what I wanted to do, and change, because that's what we adults do all the time. This gives children the autonomy to develop as creative and independent thinkers. We celebrate mistakes for the true lessons they are. We embrace a non-competitive and collaborative approach. This allows children to develop their inner strengths. So, collaboration in the adult world, we call it cheating at school. But it's natural in the adult world to, and really in the kids' world too, to collaborate. I don't understand this. Can you help me? Can you help me? How did you do that? That's just kind of a natural way that people learn. Lots of information in this chapter about different programs. Some in the U.S. There are agile learning communities. There are all kinds of places. Tucson, Arkansas, California, Tallahassee, Florida, Grassroots Free School in Tallahassee, Florida, has 5 points in their philosophy. 1. Feelings and emotions are as important in a person's development as the cognitive and physical domains. And that's also echoed in James Comer's work when he has all the different areas of kind of life. Psychological is one of them, emotional, physical, and also the cognitive. And we tend to, in conventional schools, we tend to ignore psychological, emotional, and to some degree physical. Mind, number 2, the mind is naturally inquisitive, and such inquisitiveness must be allowed and encouraged. And remember, sometimes we find in conventional school that it's not really about the kids asking questions, it's about the kids answering questions. All knowledge is interrelated. So you can't really separate math out of science, out of social studies, out of reading, out of writing. It's all combined, it's all connected. Each person is unique, and it is fundamental in an educational setting to fully respect and honor this uniqueness. My saying is, every person is a unique genius. We just have to figure out what their genius is. I've got my little engineer kid in my class now who doesn't really enjoy paper pencil at all. He likes to hear me read out loud. He pays attention to that. He will pay attention to some things. He doesn't really like to write. I've got several people in my group that don't really like to write. And so I'm going to try to explore what are some other ways that they can express themselves if they don't like to write. Maybe if we don't put a lot of pressure on them, they'll learn to enjoy writing on their own. Number 5, we are all responsible for and dependent on each other. So those are some of the schools and programs that are already changing things. And you may be the next person that comes up with an idea. Maybe in your neighborhood, you've got a church that's not using their classrooms during the week, and you want to start a little micro school. Maybe it's an after-school program. There are lots of things that can be done, and are being done, and it's already started. So I would say change is inevitable. I'm not sure the timeline. I thought when COVID came along, I thought this is it. This is just going to blow everything up. But I tend to be a little impatient because I see the benefits. The 7 days that I've spent with these children in the high ability program had just reinforced to me that what I'm thinking and doing is the correct way. And obviously it's correct for me, but I think other people can latch on to pieces of it. They may not want to do everything. Everybody's unique. And every classroom should be unique, and every school should be unique, because the people that make up that classroom or that school are different from another school. There's not any school or classroom that's a carbon copy of another. So why do we ask everybody to do the same thing? Doesn't make sense. So you can see from this partial list, then there's no way we could talk for days and days and days about all the wonderful things that are happening out there. Change is happening. I think there'll be more and more of this. There'll be more different kinds of programs come up. And like I said, you may be the person that comes up with the next wonderful idea. I think next week, we're going to continue with a similar theme, but I may also I'm going to start interviewing people, and I think I want to interview some educators, but I also want to interview people that are not in education, and maybe get their feelings about what school is like for them, what they think about school now, how they learn things, their unique little life history. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you can be notified each time a new episode comes out. Check out my book, Get Out of the Way and Let Kids Learn, How We Can Transform Schools and Reintroduce Natural Learning. A couple podcasts I recommend are Liberated podcast with Carrie McDonald and Fear the Free Child with Keela Richards. She just posted episode 270, which is the last one, but there's 270 episodes out there that you can start her journey as a homeschooling, unschooling mom from the very beginning all the way up to where she is today. And also the teacher story with Jackie Scully. Also on her program that I just listened to, I'm not quite finished with it, she interviewed a guy who was a teacher and then went to work with a company called K-12, which does furniture for schools but helps them design learning environments. And I guess his boss has a podcast, and I'm going to have to check that out. It's called Better Learning, and I can't remember the guy's name right now, but lots of information out there. If you go to the unschoolingschool.com website, there's a resources section that has all kinds of videos, all kinds of websites, all kinds of books that you can get, and check that out. Check out my band, The Rush Show, at therushshow.com and on all streaming platforms. Thanks for listening, and remember, get out of the way and let kids learn. This has been Get Out of the Way and Let Kids Learn podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe, follow, share, and leave a comment.